ARMATURA, Konstantina Krikzoni presents us with a new body of paintings. And as in her earlier work, she continues here to deal with the historical objectification of the female body in art history. And she continues to paint strong, capable women that appear to be bending, marching, or lifting one another. Compared to her earlier work, which was much more about relaxed groupings, the paintings here are much more active. So the figures come together and they appear to be doing something together. So we can say that the movement feels shared rather than controlled. Konstantina is thinking a lot here about the acrobats and the dancers that we see in the work of Derain and Picasso. But also the less well-known kind of British artists Glyn Philpott and their images of performers at rest. But she was also really influenced by a recent visit to the National and Archaeological Museum in Athens, where she sketched directly from archaic kouros sculptures. So kouros in ancient Greece were the male sculptures that were used in funerary decorations. But she also, to kind of give us this so realistic sense of movement that these women have, she also took classes in contemporary dance. The whole exhibition can be seen as a metaphor to a sculpture studio, and we can imagine these figures as sculptures or as models waiting to be shaped. Konstantina sees the painting process itself like choreographing a dance or building a sculpture, and we can see these bodies coming together as if they're constructing something physical. And it's this sense of collaboration and of collective effort that is central to her process. So Konstantina, she paints communities of women that come together to do something. We can see this very clearly in ARMATURA, which is the largest work in the series and where the exhibition takes its title from, where a group of women dance while at the same time they seem to be creating one another. So Konstantina is inspired here by Rubens, but also looking at the work, it brings to mind kind of the religious iconography that describes these ideas of Genesis. So the central figure arises while she's at the same time shaped, modeled and supported by the surrounding women. And in this way she moves between dance and sculpture. The works in ARMATURA are above all deeply autobiographical, and they were all developed in the period following the death of her father. They address grief not as subject matter, but as a condition that shapes the production of the image. And by that I mean that the paintings, they are not about grief, they do not depict grief, but rather the paintings are shaped by the experience of grief itself. So the title of the whole show, ARMATURA, which comes from the Latin word for armor or support, it refers to the inner structure that holds a sculpture in place while it's being made. But Konstantina uses the term here throughout the show to describe an internal structure that kind of sustains the self after loss, after rupture. Konstantina does not hide the process of making her paintings. Earlier marks remain visible and and the layers act as a record of how an image was built. In that sense, we can say she's a very honest painter, and it's quite generous for a painter to show us in such an accessible way how the work is being created. Line also plays a key role in how emotion is expressed here. So some lines are sharp and controlled, while others, they seem to fade, with each layer kind of carrying its own emotional weight. And in this way, we can see the layering in Konstantina's work in the drawing as a kind of an analog to a psychological layering. When discussing with Konstantina, she told me that the drawn line in her work also functions as a thread, recalling her earlier experience with embroidery. So in Greek folk tradition, embroidery is a domestic task that is carried out mainly by women. And recent studies have shown that kind of the repetitive handwork can reduce anxiety and can create a calming effect through touch and movement. So the drawn line in Armatura, in all the works in the exhibition, kind of works in a similar way. It is both a visual element, but also a meditative gesture, helping the body process grief through the steady movement of the hand. One work that I think brings to life a lot of the ideas that I mentioned that are key behind Konstantina's work is Ega, Notes on Becoming. Ega in ancient Greek meaning goat. The work was inspired by a performance that Konstantina saw in New York, which was about grief. So the central figure is a statue-like woman that is balancing on one leg, wearing a bikini and sticking her tongue out. Like in Armatura, the painting, it's unclear to us whether she's the statue or the maker. Konstantina has spoken of the protruding tongue as a play on difficult feelings, kind of the ugly and intrusive side of grief, and the need to externalize pain, to push it out of your system. So the central figure is, we can see her both as an artistic creation, but also as a reflection of the artist's state of mind, an alter ego, as Konstantina calls all these women, which repeated in various works throughout the exhibition as a way kind of to come to terms and to deal with emotions that are hard to face. We can see her and a lot of the women in her paintings as kind of embodying courage, vulnerability, and kind of the strength it takes to face what we feel.